Hello everyone. My name is Elisa. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are going to be doing my second round of anticipated releases for 2026. I always do these in like third chunks for the year. So if you want to see all of my anticipated releases for January through April, I will link that video down below. Today we are going to be talking about all of my anticipated releases from May through August. And like I've been doing for the past couple of years on my channel, I'm only doing anticipated releases from independent publishers. That is mainly because there's just so many coming out from independent publishers that it already takes up the space of a full video. I am anticipating releases from Big Five publishers as well, but you're more likely to hear about those anyway, so I don't feel like I need to put them on your radar as much. So today we have a buttload of books to talk about, an absolute buttload of books. I wrote down the number. We have 31 books to talk about. I think this is the most I've ever tried to squeeze into an anticipated releases video. It's just a banger time for independent presses and amazing books. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm just preparing you now that this is going to be a long video. I'd love to say like I'm gonna try and get through them quickly. I'm not. It's gonna take me a while. It's gonna be a long video. So feel free to skip around as needed. Now, I always have one or two publishers for each video that I do like this that seem to really rise to the top, and I have a lot of anticipated releases from them. And this time around, it is most certainly Astra House. I almost put every single book that Astra House is publishing from May through August on this list. I think I only didn't include one or maybe two. The rest are on the list, and I could have included the other ones. So that is definitely the publisher that I have my little eye on for this end of spring into summer season. So let's go ahead and get into the books. We're going to be talking about them in the order that they are being published, at least as of now. And I will try to remember to tell you the publishing date for each one. So to start us off, we are going over to Zando Books, which is a pretty big publisher, and then they have independent publisher, and they have many imprints underneath them. This is from their Tin House imprint, so really it's from Tin House because they're still like doing everything themselves. They just exist under Zando now. And this book is called Immersions by Kyle McCarthy. It's coming out on May 5th. Comps for this title are Black Swan meets Bluebeard, which I find a very interesting combo. I like both of those things, and it's set around a sisterly rivalry in the New York dance scene. We're following two sisters. We have Frances and Charlie. Charlie is the older sister. She's very much a dance star, and really at the peak of her career she falls in love with a guy named Johnny, and they have a very turbulent marriage that ends in Charlie kind of fleeing to a nunnery and becoming a nun. And that means cutting off contact with the outside world. Then we have Frances, who is the younger sister, who has always looked up to Charlie, always kind of been in her sister's shadow. And Frances has never trusted Johnny, and she wants to find out what happened to her sister. Many years down the line, I think she finds out that Johnny is going to be back in New York City, and she reaches out to him because she wants to find answers and wants to confront him. And then I think they end up entering into some sort of a relationship, and we kind of unlock secrets about both of the sisters' lives from there. Sounds very fascinating and very plotty as well, so I'm here for that one. That one is Immersions. Next up, we have a couple of books from Counterpoint Press, which is under Catapult Books. A lot of the small presses are consolidating nowadays to survive, so I'm gonna be saying stuff like that a lot. This book has a great cover. It's called Abundance, and it's by Hafeez Lakhani, and it's also coming out on May 5th. And the short tagline at the top of this one says, 2 generations of a Muslim Indian family grapple with what parts of life we control and what we must humbly except in pursuit of the American dream. And in this one, we are following a few different characters. I think we might be getting perspectives from a number of them. We start with 60-year-old Sakina. This is taking place in Miami. Sakina owns a Dunkin' Donuts franchise with her husband, and she has been told that she basically has 9 months to live unless she tries to get on an organ donor transplant list and like heavily tries to campaign essentially to get an organ donation. But she really does not want to get treatment. She sees it as destiny that this has happened to her and doesn't want to get in the way of destiny. And partly why she feels that way is many years ago, she acquiesced to fertility treatments that she didn't really want to take, but the people around her wanted her to do them. And now she's trying to live more into her own beliefs of like not using medical intervention. And her husband, Ramzan, is desperate to try and get her to change her mind about seeking treatment. So he reaches out to their daughter, their eldest daughter, Varine, and their youngest son, Adnan. And both of them sort of have excuses as to why they can't show up for their mother at this time in their lives. And I think we follow the family from there and get to see the impact of all of the individual choices that they're making. It's the type of like family saga that I think I would be interested in, and I want to read it. So that one is Abundance. The next one from Counterpoint Press as well is I Would Die If I Were You, Notes on Art and Truth Telling by Emily Rapp Black. This one's coming out on May 19th. And this one is sort of part memoir, part exploration around art and like creativity. And Emily Rapp Black is, I would say, a well-known memoirist. So this is not her first memoir. This book is further drawing on her experiences being disabled, which she's written about heavily before, but it's also following her in the aftermath of her son being diagnosed with a terminal illness and his subsequent death. And her feeling like she constantly gets the comment made to her that people would die if they were her, hence the title of the book. So she's talking about those experiences and talking about like pain and despair as parts of the human oeuvre of experience and part of being human, and how to find joyful, redemptive, meaningful ways of living, even amidst deep loss and sorrow and challenge. And it sounds great. It sounds like an interesting take on a grief memoir of trying to really incorporate how art can make a difference in your life and make a difference in your healing process. So it sounds interesting to me. Hopefully it sounds interesting to you. And I want to read it. So that's I Would Die If I Were You. Next up, we're going to Grey Wolf Press with Attention Seeking Behavior by Varfis-van Warmelo. And this cover is very intriguing. I like that it only shows a sliver of the face, and then the rest of the cover is one solid color block. This one sounds a little bit trippy, very unreliable narrator. The title might suggest that as well. And this has an interesting tagline at the top, so I'm going to read it. It says, "I have never told anyone about this before. There's no way to prove that it happened, but why would I lie?" Intriguing already. And I think this book is in a direct-to-reader type of style where the unnamed narrator is telling us about Normal Ben, who is the man that she's been seeing. And then she wants to tell you about more of her life. She wants to tell you about what's going on at work. She wants to tell you about her lying habit and seeing her therapist to try and solve that. She wants to tell you about the history of police interrogation techniques and how to use deception to get false confessions. And then the very last line in the blurb says, "But is she telling you the truth, or does she only want your attention?" I think this is like really gonna play with the reader experience, and that can go either way for me. I don't like feeling like I can see what the author is doing a lot of the time, but if it is doing it well. I'll say that, like, I'm here for it. I'm here when I feel like a book is really directly challenging me and it's being upfront about it. Maybe I don't like it when it's like trying to sneak it in. If it's gonna challenge me directly, I just want it to be like confronting and like very explicit, which I think this novel is trying to do. So that's why I think it could work for me. So that is attention-seeking behavior. Now we're going over to one of the Astor House books, which is Dad Had a Bad Day. I love the cover of this one. It's by Ashton Politanoff, maybe one of those. And this one is coming out on May 19th. And this one is about a sad dad, hence the title. It's about a sad dad who is trying to reinvent himself, and part of the way that he's doing that is joining a tennis club, but he also joins a tennis club with this secret credit card that he has that it seems like he's going into debt to do. And he also reconnects with an old friend of his who was sort of a tennis prodigy when they were growing up. And then that friend, his name is Roland, ends up disappearing. And Ned, the sad dad, goes on this quest to try and figure out what happened, and him trying to investigate what happened to Roland might destroy all of the other relationships in his life, mainly with his son and with his wife. So it's very much giving midlife crisis, but I think kind of in a modern and playful way. And the themes of this one are what really sold me on it, other than the fact that I love tennis already, so I just kind of like a book that includes tennis. It explores our desires for structure, the emotional limits of domestic life, and the unbelievably potent, powerful, intoxicating feeling of winning. And it's exploring fathers and sons, male friendship, and the psychic pressures of an individual sport. It sounds so up my street. I'm very excited for this one, and I will definitely be picking this one up. So that is Dad Had a Bad Day. Next up, we're going over to Transit Books with Dog Days by Emily Labarge. I have not read Emily Labarge before, although I have wanted to. I hear so many good things about her. And this cover I also love. I love all these covers. I think I said this in my last few videos. Covers are on point nowadays. Like, publishing houses have really stepped up their game with covers, and I appreciate it. This book is also kind of a pseudo memoir type of novel. It's following the experience, or maybe I shouldn't say following, it's centered around the experience of Emily and her family in 2009 being held hostage while they were on vacation. And it's her trying to explore how that's showing up in her life now. It also talks about what her therapist encourages her to do to try and heal from that trauma, which I'm not going to say what it is, but it's very unconventional, I would say. And the bottom of this blurb is the one that I'm gonna read to you. It says, an electrifying synthesis of memoir, criticism, and psychoanalytic theory, and channels them into political inquiry, interrogating how language and institutional structures constrain and distort our understandings of trauma, violence, and care. So yeah, it sounds really fascinating. It sounds like a horrific experience to go through. And again, I like that it's a little bit left of center, not just a clear memoir, trying to relate it back to like larger systemic things going on. I appreciate when memoirs do that. So yeah, interested in Dog Days. And that one's also coming out on May 19th, if I didn't already say that. Then we have a Charco Press release, and I will say Charco Press doesn't normally give a specific day that their books are going to be released on, at least not that far out. So this book is going to be released in, I think, June in the US, June or July in the US, I can't remember. It's getting released in May in the UK. But this is Catherdrals by Claudia Pineiro, translated by Frances Riddle, again by Charco Press. And really, this is mostly just because I want another Claudia Pineiro. I am such a fangirl for Elena Knows. I love that book so much, like so many other people do. And then I have sort of been hoarding her books since and haven't been reading them. So I have 2 of her other books and haven't read them. And am I about to try and buy a 3rd one this year? Probably. Probably. She writes crime fiction, but I would say crime fiction that leans a little bit more on the literary side. This book is one of those crime novels where the crime takes place many, many years ago, I think 30 years ago. There is the death of a girl in the neighborhood, and our narrator's father ends up continuing to investigate for the next 30 years and does eventually bring to light what happened to her. So we know that going in. I think that's kind of the beginning of the book. And then we start to explore how it stayed secret for so long. And I think like that's really a lot of like the tension and the meat of the story. I know this is having to do with religious fanaticism, so I would kind of disclose that in advance if that's something you know you want to read about or not. But yeah, I'm really excited for another Claudia Pineiro, and I do need to start reading them. I will start reading them. So that is Catherdrals, coming out sometime June, I think. Sometime June. Next up, we're going over to Hub City Press with Hope House. This is by Joe Bond, and it's coming out on May 26th. This book takes place in 1980s Kentucky. We're in a home for troubled teenage boys, and it's told in a choral voice, which I already find very intriguing. And it follows the group of boys as they go through this 5-phase program of Hope House, and they're grappling with their past and really searching for family. I think it's going to be like a coming of age, found family type of story, but having some more angst, some anger, some intensity of youth to it. And I think it sounds really fascinating. It's a debut novel as well, so I'm always willing to try out a debut. So that is Hope House. Then from New Directions, we have The Fifth Year by Marlen Haushofer. Translated, is it by Shaun Whiteside? That's who's been doing her stuff lately. Yes, translated by Shaun Whiteside. This is coming out on May 26th. And again, this one is kind of more for the author, although the premise does sound very intriguing as well. I loved The Wall. It was one of my favorite books a couple years ago. I just bought recently, oh God, what came out last year? The really slim one, Killing Stella. I just bought it and I'm planning on getting to it very soon. In this book, we're following a 5-year-old girl, Marlen, through all 4 seasons of a single year in her life that she's spending on her grandparents' farm in the mountains of Austria. Marlen's parents have died in the war, so she's staying with her grandparents. And her grandparents live out in the countryside, so she's also adjusting, it says, to a quiet pastoral life. But sinister elements lurk beneath the surface of The Fifth Year. It kind of leaves on an ominous note. But yeah, I love her writing, and I wouldn't often choose to pick up a book with a child narrator, but I trust it in her hands. So very excited for this one. So that is The Fifth Year. Then we're going back over to Tin House, or aka Zando is the larger publisher, with Hunger and Thirst by Claire Fuller. This is coming out on June 2nd. This would be my first Claire Fuller as well. She's also one I want to get to her backlist, but haven't had a chance yet. And this is a gothic horror coming of age novel. And there's something about that. I'm just in the mood for that right now, I think. Sometimes in the summer, I want to shift towards darker things. Actually, if you've seen my reading trend, I normally, the more we go into the year, the darker and darker my reading gets. So I actually start off the year, like in the end of winter, with lighter stuff, and then get darker as we go. So this might work out. So this book has 2 timelines in it. We start out in a historical timeline in 1987, and then we will shift 30 years later further on in the book. So starting in 1987, we're following 16-year-old Ursula, who is in kind of a dead-end job. She's living in a halfway house, and she meets this girl named Sue, and Sue is a wild child, but Sue invites Ursula to come stay at this ramshackle house where a bunch of young kind of like runaways are living, and it ends up being it says a hodgepodge family, and Ursula is desperately looking for love and affection and belonging. Sue appears to take that to her advantage and asks Ursula to do increasingly dangerous things. And I think something happens that then changes the course of Ursula's life forever. And then we have the big time jump, which is 30 years later. And she's living under a changed name. I think she's living in a different country, but her identity gets exposed by a true crime documentarian, and that kind of sends her life into chaos. And I think other people are now trying to find her as well. It says it's a chilling take on loneliness, of the dangerous line between wanting and needing, and how far a person will go to truly belong. Sounds very good. So that is Hunger and Thirst. Then we're going to McNally editions. They also have a few interesting ones coming out in this time frame, but I think maybe this is the only one that I knew for sure I wanted to get to. This is Quake by Kitty Mrosovsky. And it is coming out on June 9th. In this one, we're following Olivia, who is infatuated with this younger Sicilian man named Rosario. And she is back in London while Rosario is off in Italy having a romantic relationship with another woman. I think her name is Jess. Yes. And Olivia starts competing with Jess for Rosario's attention. And I think finally just like goes to Italy it says, in search of his origins in the ruins of his childhood village destroyed by an earthquake of 1968, which is, I'm assuming, why it's called Quake. And the tagline for this says, this trailblazing central portrait of female desire is Kitty Mrosovsky's most powerful work. It was also her last, written in mid-1980, shortly before she was diagnosed with HIV, that led to her death. Witty, illuminating, and replete with life, an extraordinary one-off performance to save her before the theater went dark. I'm intrigued. I want to read it. So that is Quake. Then from Astra Publishing House, we have Presence, A Hidden History of the Female Body by Erin Maglaque. This one, let's see, is getting published on June 16th. This one is also nonfiction, I would say creative nonfiction. So it's structured as a biography of the author's own body, and it follows her body throughout her life. So it says from girlhood and adolescence to sex and abortion to feeding and caring for an infant to her experience caring for someone as they were dying. Erin places personal history into a deep dialogue with a pre-modern past. She explores the relation between imagination and gender, between maternal and historical subjectivity, and she positions female desire as a practice with a past, and offers gentler and more forgiving understandings of housekeeping, pregnancy, early miscarriage, abortion, birth, sleeplessness, and breastfeeding. That was long, but I feel like I was not going to get all that in on my own. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm always looking for new, fresh, interesting takes on womanhood, girlhood, motherhood, and this one seems intriguing enough for me to try. So that is Presence. Then back to New Directions books, we have a Helene Bessette novel, 20 Minutes of Silence. This one's coming out on June 16th as well. And this one is inspired by a true crime. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should say this is translated by Kate Briggs. Don't want to miss that. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I have also wanted to read Helene Bessette's novels before. I had one on my anticipated release last year that I have not gotten to yet, but New Directions seems to be publishing a lot of her stuff or translating a lot of her stuff. It might be right for me to do a little bit of a binge on her. This book, we're following a well-to-do family, and the father has been shot by his own gun. And I think the really interesting part of this novel is it says it takes place in the 20 minutes of silence it takes for the family to alert the doctor who lives next door of the father's death. It also has a really interesting question in the blurb, which is, but who, if anyone, is the true criminal and who is the victim? And if I'm gonna read a crime novel, I want it to be kind of like questioning things about that. Like I want it to be nuanced, and it sounds like maybe this book is going to do that. So I'm intrigued. And normally the Helene Bessette novels have been fairly short. It doesn't say the page length on this, but I imagine it's going to be a slim one. All right, I've readjusted. We're good. I'm on the tiniest pillow ever. Now back to Counterpoint Press, we have Mendo, How an Unlikely Group of Rebels Turned Cannabis into California's Cash Crop by Charlie Harris. This is coming out on June 23rd, and it's clearly a nonfiction book. And really at the top of this blurb is what sold it to me. It says, a whip-smart and entertaining work of narrative history that shows how an unlikely partnership born of necessity spawned a lucrative marijuana industry that changed the world. And I think this is specifically following Mendocino County, hence Mendo, which produces billions of dollars worth of weed. And a lot of the community that lives there works in the weed industry, and that taxes from the weed industry fund a lot of what goes on there. And I'm very fascinated to kind of see the economics of all of that. So I'm curious about this one. So that is Mendo. Then back to Astra House. We have got just another spectacular cover, my lord. This one's Nebraska by Monica Datta, published on June 23rd. This one is another kind of like family saga. It's comparing it to Jonathan Franzen's Crossroad and Kieran Desai's The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. I have read Crossroads and enjoyed it, but I have not read Kieran Desai's novel. Oh yes, I'm remembering what this one is about now. So this one, it starts off by saying that Anna Chatterjee, who's the matriarch of this family, has just been released from prison. And by the time her husband, Prabir, shows up to the prison to pick her up, she has vanished. And then we're following how her husband and her children are all navigating the fallout of their mother's disappearance. So that sounds like an interesting enough premise for me to read a family saga novel. So I'm here for it. Next up, we have another Charco Press book. I think this is the only other Charco Press book I have on here. And that is 100 Guinea Pigs, coming out maybe sometime in July, question mark. And this one says, friendship makes life worth living and worth ending too. Already intriguing. This one's translated by Daniel Hahn. Oh, and this one is about Euphrasia, who is a caregiver who's been working with a woman named Doña Carmen for a long time, and Doña wants to end her life, and Euphrasia decides to help her with that. And it says that this is like a warm-hearted novel around the friendship between the two of them, trying to die with dignity and community and respect. And I think it does sound very heartwarming and heartfelt, so I'm intrigued by this one. So that is 100 Guinea Pigs. Then we're going over to Dead Ink Books. It's the first one from them in this video. And this cover, also gorge. It's called Decomposition Book by Sara Van Oss. It's getting published on July 5th. So we're now into the July, we know the date of July books. And this premise is so wacky and kooky. I love it. It says, Ava thought the great tragedy of her life would be getting stuck in a dead-end office job, but reality looks even grimmer when she goes on an ill-fated hike with two of her coworkers. And I think there's like a huge fallout and something happens, and Savannah wakes up in the woods behind her house next to a dead body. And Savannah is in such a deep pit of despair that she thinks this dead body might be a very compelling friend, and she starts to talk to the dead body and trying to have a friendship with it. And we go from there. It's very much giving that like Daniel Radcliffe movie where he plays like the Swiss Army man. It's kind of giving that. So yeah, this sounds so weird and I love it. So that's Decomposition Book. Next up, we have from Grey Wolf, we have Outcast, A History of Leprosy, Humanity, and the Modern World by Oliver Basquiano. This one is published on July 7th, and this one is what it says on the tin. It is a history of leprosy, and he is interviewing a huge amount of people for this book, and I think you get him traveling around interviewing people. And it says, along the way, he finds communities formed in exile, patient activism, and the persistent human capacity for joy. So yeah, it's a topic that I know very little about, honestly, and probably what I do know is like very stigmatized information. So I'd love to kind of unlearn some of that and learn some more accurate stuff. So that is Outcast. Then we have from Transit Books again, We Were Forbidden by Jacqueline Hartman, translated by Ross Schwartz. That is who translated I Who Have Never Known Men. Now, I was slightly let down by I Who Have Never Known Men, but this does sound very good. It's a collection of 3 stories that are all about defiance, human defiance. It says, in the wake of an unfathomable war, a woman wanders the forest. She and her fellow survivors are forbidden from leaving its boundaries or pausing in their eternal march through its strange depths. Next story. Attending a rigid French school in the 1940s Casablanca, a teenage girl is barred from ever questioning the dogma she is taught to believe. Her punishment for doing so will be as swift as it is shocking. And then thirdly, locked in a loveless marriage in the Belgian bourgeoisie, a young woman satisfies her husband's desires twice weekly as required. She has not yet thought to pursue her own. All 3 of them sound really good and fascinating, so I'm here for this one. So that is We Were Forbidden, and that one is coming out on July 7th as well. So we're going to Coach House Books. This is The Malai by Munir Hachemi, translated by Julia Sanchez. I have read from this author before and I did not like the book, but I'm willing to give them a second try because the premise sounds interesting. This one's coming out on July 14th. And this one is a speculative fiction, which is sort of why I'm willing to take a chance. The last one I read was like a horror, so I think a different genre maybe might work for me with this author. It's about a group of people called the Malai who have gone to a different planet after the climate crisis on Earth, but there are people still living on Earth and they want to know what happened to the Malai. So they send an archaeologist out to them to report back. And he finds that the people are different somehow. And I think there's something like uncanny and unsettling about it. And you sort of explore from there. I'm very into climate fiction at the moment, as I think most people are, because that's really on everyone's mind. I want to try it. So that is The Malai. Then from Dead Ink Books again, we have The Wind Hover by Lorna Elcock. This one's coming out on July 23rd. And this is another novel. There are many that have 2 different timelines. So we have a historical timeline of 1957, and we follow the Cameron family who is moving to run a remote Scottish youth hostel. And it says they're unaware that they're setting into motion a terrible chain of events that will reverberate through the decades. And I think some secrets come out about the father that start making their lives unravel. And then we cut to 1982. In the later timeline, I think we're following the 2 siblings, Allison and Ewan, as they're trying to reconcile with their childhood in that, like, their present day timeline. So that is The Wind Hover. Then from Astra House, again, I told you there were a lot of Astra House books. This isn't the last one, there's still one more. We have Burnside by Devin Defoe. This one's coming out on August 4th, which is my mother's birthday. Happy birthday to her. And it does say it's an absurdist novel, which sometimes I really don't like. It says in the vein of Joy Williams and Emma Cline, 2 authors I have not read from before, so that doesn't really help me much, but maybe it helps you. And we're following 2 disaffected young women and the local homeless man they become obsessed with. One of them or both of them feels like the local man that is homeless, his name is Burnside, or he goes by Burnside, is stalking one of them. And I think they ruin his life by like sending around rumors that he's stalking them. And the entire town turns on him. It's kind of giving me a class version of The Hounding that came out last year that was really popular, where it's like this idea of small town gossip and how our prejudices and like systems of oppression affect the marginalized people around us. And I think this is doing one but with like class. So I'm very interested. It sounds confronting. So that is Burnside. Then from Catapult Books, we have The Loneliest Tree in the World. This is by Mariana Salamao Carrara and Julie Sanchez and Allison Intrekken. Maybe those are the translators. Yeah, the last two are the translators. This one is coming out on August 18th. Oh, and this one has such an interesting framing device. So we're following a family of tobacco farmers through the eyes of the various objects in their home. So like through a mirror, through their pickup truck, through a tree outside. And I find that very fascinating, and I want to read it solely because of that. But this is, I think, mainly taking on the theme of capitalism from, in this instance, like big tobacco companies and the harmful impacts it has on its farmers. So yeah, very intrigued. Next up, oh, I do have another charcoal press on here. I have Bury Your Dead by Anna Palomaya. This is translated by Padma Vishwanathan, and this is the third in the series. I don't know if the series has the name, but it started with Of Cattle and Men. So in order it goes On Earth as it is Beneath, then Of Cattle and Men, then the third one, this one, is Bury Your Dead if you're going in chronological order. And I've read the other two, so I kind of just want to read this one. I won't tell you what this one is about because it is technically the third, but if you didn't know, she's coming out with the third one. These are short horror novellas that tend to do with class and climate, so I'm intrigued. I will read the third one. Then we have a striking cover. We have A Healthy Appetite by Katie Huddlestone. This one is from Dead Ink, and it's coming out on August 13th. And this one I kind of question whether or not I would put it on here. I am interested, but I think I might wait to see what reviews are. But we are following our main character, Hannah, who is chronically ill. She has a cancer diagnosis and she is looking for a cure. It affects every part of her life. And she ends up getting approved for a clinical trial. Immediately, she feels very different. She feels much better, but she has an increasingly growing appetite. We've kind of seen and heard these types of books before, but the interesting question that this had at the bottom that intrigued me, which is, A Healthy Appetite is a ravenous tale of morality versus mortality that asks how much of yourself would you give up to become healthy. And I do think that is rife for conversation in the chronically ill or terminally ill landscape. So I'm interested enough in this one. I have slight reservations, but interested. Next up, from Other Press, we have Your Presence is a Danger to Your Life, Voices of Survival and Witness in Gaza. This is by Samar Yazbek, and it's translated by Larry Price. And this is collected interviews, experiences with survivors from Gaza that have been there by this Syrian journalist. And the title comes from flyers that were dropped down in Gaza right before there was a bombing there that said, Your presence is a danger to your life. So yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be horrific, but I think important to witness, and that's why I want to read it. So that is this one. Next up, we have Space, Lessons in Taking and Making by Alexi Perry Cox. This is coming from Coach House Books, and it is a poetry collection coming out on August 25th. It's the only poetry collection I put on here. I'm interested in others, but I tend not to know I'm gonna buy something just from looking at the blurbs. I typically have to read a poem or two, when I'm looking at it in the store. But this one just sounds so fascinating that I felt certain that I wanted to read it. It says it's a Mad Lib style project that contends with poetry from Turtle Island and Palestinian writers and asks, how can you claim space for claiming these spaces, in brackets, like the title suggests. So it's sourcing works from a lot of Palestinian and indigenous poets and focusing on space. So sounds great to me, very intrigued. Next up, we have another Hub City Press books. I think this is gonna be their big release of the year. They've been pushing this one kind of hard. Which is Daytona Teddy Riggs by Drew Buxton. This is coming out on August 25th. We're following Daytona Teddy Riggs, who was a high school football star who is now trying to become The World's Strongest Man. This is set in the mid-90s in South Texas. And I'm gonna read the last sentence of the blurb, which is what really sold me, which is, at once an outrageous comedy, a biting satire of the self-help industry, and an earnest look at the facets of obsession, Buxton's riotous debut novel chronicles how masculinity, privilege, and mental illness intersect, which we need more books about that. So I'm here for it. And I like that it has a comedic bent. So that is Daytona Teddy Riggs. I love the title. Next up from Astor House, it is The Shame Is Over, a personal history by Anya Muhlenfelt. I'll look it up when I read it. And this is coming out on August 25th. It is a memoir about the author's evolution as a mother, lover, and political thinker, with an incisive portrayal of the struggles women face in their pursuit of autonomy and equality. Good enough for me. Next one, another one from Other Press, is The Anniversary. I love the cover of this, and this is very Other Press for their covers. I don't even know how to describe that, but I just know that it's Other Press by looking at it. And this is by Andrea Bajani, translated by Jeffrey Brock. And this is following a son who ends up walking out of his family's house and cutting them off. They're abusive towards him, and it's about what cutting them off does for his life and the process of getting to the place where he can cut them off. So sounds, again, gut-wrenching, but sounds very good. Oh, wait, that's the end. Never mind. There aren't two more. I just had two random tabs open at the end. So that is the end. We have made it. 31 books that I am anticipating from May through August. Let me know which one of these you are now anticipating as well. Let me know if there's any we should read together. And also, let me know if there's any that I missed that you're very excited about. So I will see you all in the next one. Bye.